bit louder. Let the king just a little bit prouder. Putting hope on the radio. See why? Gonna let 'em know it's the inspirational power hour.
Are listening to the Inspirational Power Hour podcast with your host, Chandra Wise. And this is a place where we celebrate the genre of gospel music. We go behind the music and we talk to the songwriters and the singers and the artists and producers that create the music that we love. And we also, every now and again, we will talk to people and we'll hear stories that will uplift and inspire you outside of gospel music as well. And today is no different. Now, guys, as we know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And because of that, this is a conversation that we are committed to having each and every year because it's such an important conversation for us to have. So this week, I'm incredibly excited to talk with a good friend of mine, a longtime friend, Mrs. Rhonda Davis. Now, you might know Rhonda. You've seen her in some of Tyler Perry's plays throughout the years. She's been on tour with him on some of the DVDs. She's also a national recording artist, actress, and singer. But in addition to all of those creative abilities that she has, she is also a licensed therapist. So today we are talking to her about mental health, and we're talking about how we can end the stigma and what we can do to really make sure that we are making our mental health a priority. So as always, make sure that you're following online at Chandra Wise on Instagram and Twitter. Make sure to like the Inspirational Power Hour fan page on Facebook. All right, guys, let's get right into this week's conversation.
It's the inspirational power hour.
Hey guys, listen, this is the Inspirational Power Hour, and today I'm super excited. One of my longtime friends and one of my favorite people in the world. She's so incredibly talented and gifted in just in so many areas. But today, I'm really excited about this conversation that we're talking about. We know that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Now, my good friend, Mrs. Rhonda Davis, how are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Listen, guys, you may know her face, her voice. She's incredibly talented, a singer, actress. She has shared the stage, been featured in several of Tyler Perry's plays, and just so many things I'm not even going to go into because her resume is quite long, quite extensive. But Google her, do that, Rhonda Davis. But today, Rhonda, you wear another hat. Now tell us about what you do professionally outside of that.
Outside of singing and acting, I am a team leader for the Children and Youth Therapists for Region 9, which is the county's community mental health center, Hines Behavioral Health Services. But I am also the owner and operator of my private practice counseling services, and that name is Therapeutic Harmony Counseling Services. So I'm a licensed professional counselor with the state of Mississippi, providing private practice counseling here in Mississippi.
Incredibly excited about that. First of all, before we kind of go into our talking points, like I said, I've known you for so long, and I think some people may only know you in the context of what they see you do on stage.
Right.
But where did your passion for service in the mental health area come from?
I would have to say from my mother. My mother was a practicing social worker for over 40 years. Mm-hmm. So I watched her get up every day and go out and try to make sure she makes a difference in the public and in the community. Come home, regardless of how tired she was. You know, her passion was still making sure that she got up to do what she needed to do for her clients every day. Hearing the anonymous stories of the people that she's helped, and, you know, even seeing people out in the public still remember the things that she's done for them. So I would have to say that she was my biggest inspiration as far as going into the mental health field and the counseling field. And I've always been a person who wanted to help others. I was always considered that person that was easy to talk to or a listening ear. So I think it was just a part of me and my character as far as wanting to be that listening ear for somebody. And if I can do that and make a living out of it, then why not?
Right. Because, and as we are about to get into, it's so needed in our community, period. First of all, it's just needed, and especially in a time such as this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So incredibly anxious to get into this conversation. When we talk about mental health, give your definition of what is mental health.
My definition would be the overall psychological and emotional well-being of an individual. Making sure, and I say that's my definition, but that's really the general definition that, just about everybody probably would use. Just making sure that the physical body and the mental body, they are connected. One of my favorite sayings says, happiness is when what you think, what you feel, and what you do are in harmony. And so that's kind of like the basis for why I chose Therapeutic Harmony as the name for my counseling services, because when all three of those aspects of the individual is working together and in harmony, then you have I would like to say, a good mental health, if that makes sense. So practically that's what everybody uses, the psychological and emotional well-being of a person, and making sure that both aspects of that person are well.
And what you said, what you think, what you feel, and what you do, when those three things.
Mahatma Gandhi actually said that. Happiness is when what you feel, what you think, and what you do are in harmony. So I just think that so beautifully meshes the musical side of me with the counseling side of me, because we all know what harmony means in a music world. You can have several notes going together, and some notes don't fit. They don't sound right together. They don't fit well together. But when you get those 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 notes that gel well and it sounds good to the ear, then you know that that's harmonizing. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to counseling. When what you feel, what you're thinking, and actually what you're doing, they actually mesh and they go well together, then that's what Mahatma Gandhi considers as happiness. There are so many times that we feel one way and we can say, well, my heart says this, but then you turn around and you do something totally different because your mind was thinking this, and so now you're in chaos. But when your heart and your mind can be on the same page, that's harmonizing. That's good music.
Yes, ma'am. All right. So when we think about mental health in the Black community, specifically, because I think that affects the majority of my listeners and so many people that we know. Why do you think it is that mental health in our community is still such a taboo thing?
I have some personal opinions on that, so I don't want to get too personal. I think just as a generation, as a culture, as a race, African Americans they've continued to embody this, what stays in the house, what goes on in the house stays in the house type of mentality. We've been told to, because African Americans have a very, very deep spiritual background. So a lot of times we'll just pray about it. I've heard so many older people, older generation will say, well, you don't have to go talk to a shrink, those type of terms that they use when you talk about someone that is a mental health professional. So with so many things, I think all of those things come into play when it comes to our African American community. We don't want to go and tell our business to somebody, or we can deal with it ourselves, or we want to hide our secrets, that type of thing. Then there's that stigma of, if you go see a counselor, then you're crazy, or you're losing your mind, or those type of things, or even you don't have enough faith to believe that God can handle or deal with, the things that you're dealing with in your mind. I even go back far in history, people used to believe, and not just African Americans, but people used to believe if you had a mental illness and you were battling with some type of demonic possession, or you had an evil spirit. So it's so many different things that tie into why we still, as a culture, have our issues or our concerns with going to counseling or needing some mental health assistance.
Exactly. And so when we think about it, about all of those things that lend to the stigma, especially in the African American community, and all those things, they do not really create a safe space, traditionally, for people to freely seek the help and have that support system around them. How do you think we can help end the stigma in our communities? What can we do to end that stigma?
The biggest thing I think we should, and well, I don't want to say should, but that we can do two things: educate and normalize would probably be the two biggest things. Educate by explaining and informing our community that just like you would go to your primary care physician if you had high blood pressure or you're battling with diabetes or a migraine and you want to keep your physical body whole, you would also need to do the same thing to keep your mental body whole. I don't think people realize just how much your mental health ties into your physical health.
Yes.
I think it's starting to become very popular to where a lot of primary care physicians are starting to recognize that a lot of their clients that are coming in with high blood pressure issues probably are dealing with a lot of anxiety and depression and stress. So the more stress you're under, the higher your blood pressure is. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are not making that connection that there's the physical aspect to a mental aspect to some of your physical health concerns. So educate our community on that. And then normalize, let people know that it's totally okay to need mental assistance or to need help with some of your mental concerns. That aunt who we would say, oh, she just had bad nerves. Or we've heard that growing up, or grandma had a nervous breakdown. We've said those words and we've said those phrases so often, and we just kind of throw them out. But that was mental illness all along. That was a cry out for help all of those years. So normalize that it happens and that it's normal and you can live a healthy life and a normal life with having some mental health concerns. So I think the biggest two things is to educate our community and normalize it to kind of get rid of that stigma.
And with both of us, I know that our faith is so incredibly important to both of us. It's such a part of who we are. And you kind of mentioned a little earlier about the religious aspect of, our community. How can churches help to end the stigma and support those that may be struggling with mental health issues?
I think one of the biggest influencers, the biggest influencer in the church is the pastor. If you get your pastor behind taking care of your mental health and taking care of your soul, mind, and body all together, if your pastor preaches there from the pulpit and advocates for that, then I think that's going to be the biggest influence in our churches, because they're going to hear that my pastor supports this. My pastor doesn't feel like if I go to a counselor, then I don't have faith, that type of thing. So biggest influencer that can help the church is the pastor. Not just that, but there are so many other programs that can be implemented within the church to give support to some of the parishioners that may have some mental health concerns. There is a class that is offered so many different places that I know that they will come and teach in a lot of churches if you request it. And the class is called Mental Health First Aid. And what that class will do is an 8-hour course. And once you're complete with that 8-hour course, you'll have a certification. Does not say that you are now a counselor or that you are now a psychiatrist or something like that. But what it does is it teaches you the first aid of mental health. So what tips that you can use to just stabilize the mental health crisis, or if someone is having a mental health concern, how to stabilize it until a mental health professional is on the scene, just like you would do in normal first aid. Apply pressure to the wound, that type of thing, until you get to a professional medical person. Same thing. So there are teachers out here in the area that will come to your church and teach a mental health first aid class, and it'll give you all kinds of tools and techniques that lay people in the church will be able to utilize to help some of the parishioners. Another thing, you can even add a counseling ministry to your church.
Absolutely.
Which is that is an awesome thing to do. And a lot of our African American churches, we do not have those. There are plenty. I'm almost positive that in just about every congregation, there's a counselor or someone with some mental health background, or a social worker or something that can spearhead some type of mental health ministry in the church.
Right.
They may not be licensed counselors and can actually provide all of the tools that they need to go to counseling, But I'm sure that there's enough people in each church that can spearhead the ministry that will get each person to the right resource, connect them to the right person to get them the mental health help that they need. So that's another good way that our churches can advocate for mental health.
Rhonda, definitely, if you can, make sure that you share that resource, and I definitely want to share it with all of our, any of our churches that may be interested in that. I think that's a great opportunity, because especially for leaders, and I can kind of attest myself, a lot of times you'll have so many situations right there on the spot. And like you said, there's been some times I know that what was going on in that moment was beyond me, and it needed a professional, but you don't want to dismiss that person, or you don't want to, make the situation worse or anything like that. So you need to kind of know what to do in that moment until you can go on in that situation.
And this particular course teaches all type of things. One particular topic it'll touch on is suicide. If you come across a parishioner who has contemplated suicide or is actively at that moment contemplating suicide, this class will give you certain things to say, what not to say, warning signs, that they may be suicidal, and it will kind of walk you through some things to do until a mental health professional gets on the scene. It normalizes schizophrenia, or someone who may be hearing voices or seeing things that's not there, and it kind of teaches you on things that you should or should not do to help that person until someone gets on the scene. So I think it is an awesome class. It's two different ones. You can get one for mental health first aid for youth, and then there's one mental health first aid course for adults. So I recommend everybody take both.
Amen. All right. So we're going to get that. We're going to get that information so that we can share it with anybody that's interested. Definitely our churches. Now let's kind of talk about what we're dealing with right now. We've been quarantined from our normal day-to-day activities for a while now. Right here in our state, it's been over a month, definitely, and even in some places globally, it's been longer than that. First of all, how have you seen? How has this affected what you do? Have you seen any type of spike in cases or anything like that?
I will say this: it depends on what aspect or that you're looking at it from. I have seen a lot of parents reach out to need mental health services for their children. Since this pandemic and the COVID-19 situation has happened, I've seen a lot of parents reach out for services for their children, for one, because now that they're at home with them a lot more, they're having to do a lot of teaching and be the home cook and be the person who sets aside nap times, things that they're probably not used to. And the parents are trying to work from home. All those type of things are going on. So parents are now starting to see things that they didn't see in their children. A lot of things that the teachers will probably be talking about in school, and the mom is saying, oh, that's just the teacher, or teacher just doesn't get it, or whatever. So now the mom and the dad, they're being able to see it for themselves. And it's an eye-opener to say, well, maybe there is something to what some of these reports have been saying. But then on the other hand, parents are reaching out for more assistance for themselves as well, because they're working from home. They're being the teacher. They're being the cook. They're trying to do everything at once and then balance. And they're recognizing that they don't have as many of the skills that they thought they had to balance it all. Because for 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day they're at work, they can balance work. But now they're having to balance work and all those other things. So they're reaching out a lot for themselves. Parents are more anxious because they don't want their families to contract this disease. They don't know, honestly, how you get it. You know what I'm saying? Where you can get it from. There's so many unknowns to this pandemic, and a lot of parents are seeing a lot of anxious symptoms out of this fear and out of this unknown. So yes, this quarantine and this pandemic has caused a major increase in a lot of the mental illness and and let me just say this lightly. If you have a concern, that does not necessarily equal to a mental illness. And I think that's another stigma.
Okay.
So we can be dealing with this quarantine situation. Environmentally, I'm more anxious, I'm more stressed, I'm more depressed because I can't see my people. I am isolated. There's a lot of things that can be coming about because of this situation, because of the pandemic. And so what I'm experiencing is because of this pandemic. So at this time, I am in need of some mental health skills, some resources. I need some extra help. It's not necessarily mean that you have a mental illness. Because there are people who will come out of this and will have what we would like to maybe consider an adjustment disorder, having a difficult time adjusting to this newness, this uncertainty, And so once the pandemic is over, things are back to normal, they have no more symptoms. Everything's fine. So that may not necessarily be a mental illness that they will have to live with for a long time, but they were having a mental health crisis, or they were dealing with some mental health symptoms that was causing their life to be not what they're used to it being.
Yeah.
And so then you have a mental illness where not only is this environmental and it's something that's happening now, but it's been going on for such a prolonged time that this is something I'm now living with. This is something that I don't know how to cope with anymore. I don't have the skills. You know what I'm saying? It has totally changed how I live, move, and have my being on an everyday basis. So I think a lot of people fear that if I go get mental health help for what I'm going through, then I'm mentally ill. And that's not necessarily true.
Yeah. Every time I go to the store, I'm walking in my mask and I'm looking down the aisles at everybody else with it. Well, not everybody, because everybody's not wearing masks. People wear your, but you're seeing people with masks on. You're seeing the lines in the floor, and for a while there was a time where I felt like I was scavenging to find toilet tissue and to find things like that, and all of those. It's surreal to me at times that this is life right now. We're walking in the store with masks on, stuff that we watch on television. And it does bring about a certain level of anxiety, of uncertainty for everything. And even when you come in the house, just trying to take a wipe and wiping as many things down as you possibly can. So I think all of this really lends to just a certain level. And I'm going to tell you something else, and I would love for you to speak about this a little bit. I didn't think about this when I sent you talking points. A good friend of mine who I love dearly, she is a traveling nurse, and she took a job to be in New York for a while to work specifically with COVID patients. Okay. And I'm telling you, I've really been praying for her, really been praying for her, because that's not light work. And so for our healthcare workers, Rhonda, what is life going to look? Well, first of all, right now, and then getting back to some type of normalcy after this, for whatever that looks like. Because in my mind, I can only imagine it's kind of like being in some type of warlike situation where you're coming out of that and you're trying to get back to something normal. So that kind of baffles me as well. Have you seen any type of, for our healthcare workers, anything regarding that?
Not personally, but we have heard the stories of healthcare workers committing suicide. Healthcare workers having what we would call a nervous breakdown or a mental breakdown out of stress, depression, fear that I am going to contract this disease and going to give it to someone else, or I may give and I may not survive. There are so many what ifs and unknowns that healthcare workers are exhibiting or experiencing, that you're exactly right. When this is over, it's going to take a little bit getting back to normal. And we don't even know what normal is going to look like when this is over. Because what we considered normal before this started may not be the normal when this is over.
Exactly.
So our healthcare workers they have to do just as much self-care. That's a big thing that I like to talk about as well, as far as maintaining their mental health, making sure that they're checking in with whomever they have. A lot of the hospitals and other healthcare providers, they have what is considered like an EAP program, an an employee assistance program. And so their programs will sometimes offer so many free therapy sessions each time an employee is needing some mental health help. And so a lot of the employees are reaching out to their EAP providers and cashing in on those free counseling sessions during this time. And it's totally okay.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the healthcare providers, they have this super person, I don't want to say Superman or Superwoman, but super person mentality that I should be able to handle this because I'm in, you know what I'm saying? I do this every day. I'm on the front line. I'm doing this. Why am I feeling this way? This is what I went to school for, you know? And sometimes we go and we and we don't take care of ourselves until we run out of batteries.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the healthcare workers, they got to do just as much self-care for their mental health as they are taking care of everybody else's physical health.
Mm. Absolutely. And we continue to just be of support as much as we possibly can, for them. I saw a beautiful thing the other day at one of the hospitals here on the news. The local National Guard lined up outside of, I think it was the university, and just really cheered for all of the healthcare workers that day as they were going in to work.
Yeah.
And that says something when the military is cheering on the healthcare workers. That shows
right.
you, exactly what we're dealing with.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is because it's when you said the military, even though war and all those type of things those are uncertain times as well, but they know exactly what they sign up for when they go into the military. This, you have no clue. And I think that's the biggest part that adds to the anxiety of a lot of people, because you just don't know. Every day is something different. Everything changes from moment to moment. So
yeah,
it's very anxious, or it incites a lot of anxiety in a lot of people.
It does. All right, guys, listen, again, Rhonda Davis is here. She's a licensed practicing family counselor there.
Well, I guess you could say my title is a licensed professional counselor, so an LPC for the state of Mississippi. My degree is in marriage and family counseling.
Okay.
But my private practice is for just overall counseling needs. Okay.
So guys, we're going to share all of that information again before we're done. So hang around for all of that. Rhonda, let me ask you this. If someone, first of all, you talked a little bit about some classes, you talked about self-care. What are some of the tools that you recommend for people that might be struggling right now mentally and emotionally during this time? Those that may be patients. I think patients are already under care of their physician for the most part. But for those that may not necessarily have a mental health issue, but may be struggling from everything that's going on right now, what are some tools you would recommend?
Some of the things that we've been talking about, small things, and I know to other people it seems like, oh, well, that's just, you should do that anyway, but we don't. I tell a lot of people to keep a gratitude journal. A lot of times changing, and that goes right along with changing your thoughts or challenging your thoughts. When I talk about happiness is when what you do, what you feel, and what you think is in harmony. I really believe that those three things are connected. And a lot of times what you think is affected by what you've done, or what you do, which is affected by how you feel. So all of it's connected. So if one of those things change, then the other two will change. And what I tell people is, most of the times, it's not your feelings that you want to try to change, because your feelings are your feelings. They're perfect. What you feel is what you feel. But if you challenge that thought, then your feeling will be affected by your thoughts. And then your action will be affected by what you're thinking and what you're feeling. So instead of focusing our thoughts on the negative, which makes us anxious or depressed and makes us sleep a lot or cry or whatever, then change that thought and focus it more on the positive, and watch what you do differently and watch what you think differently. So being more grateful and showing gratitude, or keeping a gratitude journal of everything that you can think about you're being grateful for, or keeping a thought log, period. When you find yourself thinking something negative, immediately challenge it. replace it with a positive one.
Mm-hmm.
But even before you replace it, don't judge yourself that you had a negative thought. So that's another tool. Don't be so hard on yourself that I'm thinking negative at the moment. Okay, that's what I was thinking. And I recognize it. Okay, that's what I was thinking. So now that I know that that's what I was thinking, let me try to change that. Do something different. Get up, exercise, move around. And I'm not saying go and, become a fitness guru and, come take on these weight loss regimens and that type of thing. No, but just it's been proven that motion and movement will increase so many different natural endorphins and, those type of things. So move, go outside. Vitamin D helps a lot with your mental health. A lot of people don't recognize it.
Yeah.
But go in the sun for a while. You know what I'm saying? Walk outside and walk around your neighborhood. A part of challenging that thought is not accepting that social distancing equals isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the way you change your perception and your perspective. I really believe in perspective changes. Another one of my favorite quotes says, if you change the way you look at things, then the things you look at change. Mm-hmm. So it's all about looking at it differently. And then it becomes something different to you. So I think those are the best things that we can do just on an everyday basis to kind of just renew our minds, challenge our thoughts. And like you said, both of us are faith-based. We know what the Bible says. Mm-hmm. And it speaks about out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. It speaks about those things that's on the inside that comes out. So we got to change it. You know what I'm saying? So a man thinketh, so is he. Mm-hmm. Like all of those to me are just, they're like counseling. They're heavy in counseling beliefs. Those are some things that we could do.
All right. I'm so grateful, Rhonda, that you've taken out time to talk to our listeners about this. This is a subject that we need to continue. This is a conversation we need to continue having, not just in May, but year round.
That's right.
Especially as we're going through this. And like you said, as we come out of this to whatever the new normal is going to look like, the work that you all do is incredibly important, is going to continue to be important. So I applaud you, all of the workers in the mental health field as well. I really appreciate that. Staying connected. One night it was one of my friend's birthday, and we had a little virtual girls' night. That's all we could do. On our phones and everything. And that even after doing that, something that simple, it just felt so much better.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes. I don't know if I'm sure you have. There's so many different DJs that are doing virtual events, and Bishop Hez and John P. Key did their virtual, and it's just, you see, I don't know about you, but you see the comments of the different people that are there, and mentally I feel like I was at the concert with these people. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And even though you know that you're not, you know what I'm saying? You know that you're not socializing with these people. Just the feeling of it and just the thought, it makes you feel so good. It makes you feel so included. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like what I mean about changing your perspective and changing your thought. Mm-hmm. Just instead of, I'm by myself or I can't go to this concert. Yeah. I'm at the concert with Michelle Obama.
Okay. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Give everybody any contact information you want to share, like your social media information. If there's anybody that might be in the area that's in need of services, can you share some information regarding that as well?
If you are in need of services and you're within the county, if you're in Hinds County, well, let me just say this: wherever your listening area may be, and you need immediate services, the best thing to do is always try to reach out to your local community mental health center. And they are all over the state. They're divided by regions. Like I said, the one here in Hinds County is Hinds Behavioral Health Services, Region 9. They are probably a really, really good resource for any type of mental health questions. And they can guide you in the right direction. There's a crisis team there. So if you're in the middle of a mental health crisis, they have a crisis team they can dispatch out to you. And they can get you the information that you need to get that crisis handled. There's also a program that it's been going on for some years now, which is CIT, and it is crisis intervention training for your law enforcement. And so what it is training law enforcement professionals how to also handle your mental health crisis. And kind of like a mental health first aid that I was talking about, but this one is more so for law enforcement. So as they come on the scene, they are starting to be able to recognize when this is not just a criminal situation, and they can help them get to the right resources and hopefully alleviate them being taken to jail or being put in some type of lockdown. So the crisis team in mental health, your community mental health center will be able to help hopefully get you connected to some CIT officers if you're in need of those as well. But just for therapy, there are so many therapists within this area that I dare not start naming a whole lot of them. It's always good to look on Psychology Today. A lot of therapists are listed, and you can search by zip code, and it'll tell you who's in your area, if they're accepting new clients, if they are in your insurance panel network. It'll be able to tell you all that type of information. You can also go to www.dmh.gov, which is the Department of Mental Health website. It'll have a lot of good information. I always tell people about the NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Their website, which is www.nami.org. They also have a great, a lot of information that you may be helpful during a mental health crisis. My company is Therapeutic Harmony Counseling. I am not a social media person, and a lot of people get on me a lot about that. So you can reach me at Therapeutic Harmony Counseling at gmail.com if you would like to get more information on counseling services. And counseling, to me, counselors are just like doctors.
Okay.
Find you a good fit. If that one is not a good fit, we can make sure we get you to the right person. So
I'm trying to type all this out as you say it.
Okay. So, you can just reach out to me, and I can try to get you in the right area or help you get the right resource that you need.
What was that first website you said before the NAMI.org? What was the other one?
It's Department of Mental Health. So that's for the state of Mississippi. That's www.dmh.ms.gov.
Okay, let me make sure I got that right. www.dmh.ms.gov.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Because I want to share all of this on my social media for any of our listeners or anybody in the community that may be interested. Rhonda, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. I'm so incredibly proud of you and the work that you're doing. Is there anything else that you want to add that maybe we didn't cover?
I think the last thing that I would probably want to make sure I definitely add is make sure you are not judging yourself if you feel like you need help for some type of mental health. It's totally okay to not be okay at this time or any time. Reach out to some of those resources that we listed and get the help that you need today. Take care of yourself. Self-care is not just taking a bubble bath. It's a part of it, but it's like I said, your mind, body, and spirit. You need to make sure you're taking care of all of that. If you're taking care of someone else, the caretaker needs to make sure they're taking care of themselves. You can't pour from an empty vessel. You know what I'm saying? So make sure you're filling that vessel up so that you can pour out to others. And suicide is high in these anxious times. So anybody that may be having some suicidal thoughts or suicide ideations, there's a national suicide hotline. So wherever you are, reach out to them at 1-800-273-8255. I always give people that information because I think we try not to think about it, but it's happening every day and it's real. So I want to make sure that people know that information as well.
Can you text me that number?
I will.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rhonda. I'm so, again, just so proud of you. And I really appreciate you for sharing all of your wealth of knowledge with our listeners today.
Thank you so much for having me, Sandra.
All right. Be safe. Y'all take care. thank you guys so much for taking time and for checking out my conversation with Rhonda Davis. Make sure to check her out. Follow her online. Also, check her out in some of Tyler Perry's plays. You can see her. She was in Medea's Neighbor from Hell. So make sure that you check that out. All right, guys, listen, make sure that you're following online on Instagram. Make sure to follow at Chandra Wise on Twitter at Chandra Wise, and make sure to like the Inspirational Power Hour fan page. All right, guys, have a fantastic week. Stay focused and encouraged. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.
It's the Inspirational Power